Okay. Dear God, it's another installment of Ozzy and Keats. We're not great. We're just okay. We're going to be joined by our friend, big Red Wing fan, Dave Coulier, the pride of St. Clair Shores, Michigan. He'll be along with us. And so with that sort of theme in mind,
Yeah.
and with great trepidation, I'm taking you back into the late 80s television shows, the shows that you watched that you absolutely cling to. And anybody who's seen us on TV,
Yeah.
on the Red Wings live pregame and postgame show, you're obsessed.
I haven't left the 80s.
Yeah, I know.
One of my favorite shows that was newer, now is, I'm waiting for last season, Stranger Things. Only being because the 80s music and because they still go to the malls when they were malls. Like when you went there to walk around, they're packed, and that was the place to be in the 80s.
All right, give me your 5 best shows from that era growing up. The ones that you still watch or that you wouldn't miss back in the day.
Cheers for sure would be. Am I ranking them 1 to 5?
I happened to flip across. I was dating this woman who is now my wife, and so we were sort of channel surfing and sort of stumbled upon Cheers, the first episode, and just thought it was sensational.
It's spectacular stuff. If you watch them season by season, and they're all kind of runs into one another, how the relationships evolve, but great lines. One of the best shows of all time in my estimation. And then I'm going to have to skip over something. And now I take into account I was 12 years old to being a teenager, correct? During this
considerably
span.
older.
So it's going to change a bit.
Right.
The 18.
Okay.
I don't know why. Because every show was the exact same, just with different characters and different villains. And I feel like if I could have taken acting lessons, I could have been on the show. Would not be that difficult.
Really?
Yeah. A year of acting. You don't think I could have taken Larry's spot in Three's Company, which is in my top 5 too, if I had some acting lessons. So when I'm watching these shows, this is what I'm thinking, like Family Ties. I could have been Mallory's boyfriend, no problem. I could have been. Just with a little bit of touch-up and some polish, I could have been on there, right? Which, that would be a really good thing, be Mallory's boyfriend back in the 80s.
Because somebody is filling that role, and someone probably only slightly more trained than you were at the time.
If I would have got the training that I've got from you the last 10 years, I for surely could have done that.
Oh, my God.
Then you go back to the 80s. Now, was Gilligan's Island in the 80s? It was. Just probably was in the 70s, I believe it was.
More 70s, 60s, 70s, That.
And I did, and I'm all over the map here, Magnum P.I. I did like Magnum P.I. I always did.
One of our great delights was flying to Los Angeles because Thomas Magnum, Tom Selleck, would wear a Tiger's cap during the episodes because he had grown up in Detroit, much like our guest today, Dave Coulier. And so that was his nod to his roots. And so we got the chance to interview Tom Selleck about Tiger Stadium before they closed it, because we had an hour-long episode as the curtain came down on Tiger Stadium for all time. So getting to know Tom Selleck, or having had the chance to chat with him about that was great stuff.
A couple others just come to mind. Family Ties. Michael J. Fox, Canadian Michael J. Fox.
Right. Yeah.
I did enjoy that
Meredith
show.
Baxter Burney.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that show. I mentioned it previous that I could have been on the show as Mallory's boyfriend, but that is the show. And Who's the Boss? Because Tony Maselli, which I do pat myself after now because I do a lot of cleaning at my house, and he was. I do. I whistle the song while I'm cleaning.
Do you?
The Who's the Boss theme song.
Can you give us a few bars of that?
You know that.
But Three's Company is that's your wheelhouse. That's where you live, is Three's Company.
John Ritter. Great stuff. Outstanding. The late great. Went way too early. He was a gem in that show. Ralph Furley, Don Knotts, who was in everything, it seemed like, from the 60s to the 80s. He liked to over-exaggerate things, we would say.
I know. And I can't tell anybody listening this anymore how many Ralph Furley references there are from Chris Osgood as we're either on camera or waiting to go on camera, because
I feel like it's a lot between you and me because a lot of Ralph Furley's being was a lot of misunderstandings. And you and I are pretty much riding that same wavelength, and we're in that same world.
We never understand each other?
We never understand what's going on. It's always a misunderstanding, and we're always going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. All right. And SCTV is your Canadian friends.
And for your thing, it's remember Ralph Furley used to always pass out. So you've passed out a lot after games or whatever you do when you get home.
I mean, it's like I need to
unwind.
Unwind is a good way of putting
Yeah.
it. But you had Love Boat.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge
Fantasy Island.
fan.
I mean, they would roll through the all the usual TV star suspects would roll through those those roles.
I liked Fantasy Island. I did. Not so much of a Love Boat. Never ever got into that.
How about Dallas, which was talk about appointment TV. That was probably before you, but I mean, people the Who Shot JR episode.
I'm going to tell you, my problem is focus, and Dallas, you had to be focused on the plot. Like, it was a lot going on.
I didn't hear anything after my problem is focus. At that point, that period,
listen,
exclamation
if you look at the
point.
shows I named, you don't need a lot for Three's Company.
No,
You're just kind of watching, and then it's the end of the show. Dallas, you had to follow the plot. What was Who Killed JR? Was that the big thing?
Right, yeah.
Back in the day. I just never got into that either. It was too serious of a show for me.
But there were tens of millions of people who tuned in for that because
one of the other than the MASH final episode, right, or the Cheers, that was one of the most watched final episodes ever.
Yeah. Okay. And where do we fall on MASH? Because it was a huge success. That wasn't not so much.
No, I put that in the category. I was a big Star Wars guy, so I'm fine with sci-fi, but I was never into Star Trek. For some reason, I couldn't just get into it. Another famous Canadian, William Shatner.
I'm not a science fiction person, but what's the difference from, I can be a Star Wars guy, but not a Star Trek guy?
There was a story in Star Wars, but much more action. We go back to my focus. Star Trek was slower. It was slower.
Yeah.
It was slower. There's more of a lot of conversations. I wanted the action. I wanted action.
Yeah. But the acting in Star Trek, I mean, that's
brilliant.
Do
you think I could have been? I think I could have been on Star Trek, just with a little bit of polish. William Shatner, a former Canadian, could have gave me a little bit of polish.
Can you do the fingers like?
Remember, you used to always do that.
Dr. Spock.
You had to move them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that.
You could do that.
Yeah, in school, my friends always did that.
Yeah.
But I was a mediocre, I'd say at best, Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a big Caribbean Cincinnati fan. Venus Flytrap.
Dr. Johnny Fever. I mean, I was getting into radio, or had made my career choice, knowing that I wanted to get into radio. So
because of him,
because
of Johnny Fever,
I wanted to be Les Nessman, as it turns out. With the remember the episode where they're dropping the turkeys from the helicopter?
One of the best episodes ever.
But they were supposed to be frozen turkeys, and they were actually live turkeys that were being dropped for a Thanksgiving treat. So. Do you remember what a revelation? I mean, the recording, not VHS, but what's I'm spacing it. What's the TiVo?
TiVo.
Well, how much TiVo changed the world?
Everything.
Yeah.
Because before, if you missed, and you weren't seeing it. There was no. They didn't re-show the shows. I mean,
you could record your VHS on your shows on your VHS.
Yeah, but if you missed the final episode of Cheers, it was gone.
Yeah, right.
You weren't going to be able to see it again. I remember times you're rushing home to
see
stuff.
Kids are staring at their computers or YouTube, just going, "What are they talking?
What are they talking about?
Yeah,
are they that old? That came out right now
that's
too.
True. Yeah,
and it's true.
Yeah.
But I remember, we'd be at hockey practice and rushing home to see something on TV because it was.
If you missed it, you missed it.
Yeah, you had the TV guide. You look through it. You circle it with your pen.
Right.
That's what you're going to be there.
Yeah.
If you missed it, it was gone. You weren't seeing it again. So the days of 2, 4, 5, 7, when I was in Canada and fighting with my brother to see who would change the channel because you know how hard it is to move 10 feet because nobody lived in a big living room then. You had the shag carpet. Right. The TV's actually right there.
Your brother was the remote.
But back then, a room that big seemed like it was a cathedral.
Did you ever record Full House?
Yeah. Full House was one of my favorite shows.
See? See how it all comes together? It all comes
honestly,
full circle?
I was never a Saved by the Bell fan, although when I started watching Saved by the Bell, you can't stop because for some ridiculous reason. But I was always a Full House guy, to be honest.
And so how cool do you think it is that you got to know Dave Coulier, and how cool as Dave Coulier thought it that he got a chance to know Chris Osgood?
Because I have Dave Coulier's number on my phone. And then when my kids would watch, when my girls were younger, it was iCarly, and Full House was still on.
Yeah.
Syndicated, obviously, on. And I would show them, Dave thinking like, oh, Dad's going to be big time.
Yeah.
You, my young daughters right now.
Yeah.
You might know iCarly, but I know this person right here.
Yeah.
I know Uncle, what was it? Uncle...
Joey Gladstone.
Joey Gladstone. I know Uncle Joey. And they thought that was the coolest thing when they were that age.
Yeah.
That I had known him.
I got Dave Coulier to record a message to my daughter before she got married, and she must have thought that was the greatest thing ever. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, we forget
Joey Gladstone,
how big that show was and still is in some way, shape, or form. But that was part of America back then.
Yeah.
During that little time frame.
John Stamos and Bob Saget and Dave Coulier and the Olsen twins, which really is only one Olsen character that was on screen at a time. Alan Thicke was
Alan Thicke.
in that realm too.
Yes.
All right. Well, we've talked of Dave Coulier. Why don't we talk to Dave Coulier? And we'll do that next as Ozzy and Keats continues after this. Hey, Bell Tire is changing tires and changing the tire game with the lowest tire prices, free flat repairs, tire rotations, and alignment checks. And they're not just changing tires. For decades, the Bell Tire Hockey Club has helped young athletes develop their skills, chase their dreams, and even reach the NHL. Stop by or go to belltire.com to see how they're different. Hey, Grand Valley State University is filling Michigan's talent pipeline. Graduates of the state's third largest university are moving Michigan forward, with more than 86% of GVSU alumni working in and strengthening our state in well-paying careers. It's no wonder that in a recent survey, Michigan business leaders chose Grand Valley as the most excellent school in the state. Learn more at gvsu.edu/impact. We're happy to be joined by our good pal, huge Detroit sports fan, Dave Coulier. We'll get to the cancer stuff in a minute because we're delighted for that, and we'll talk about your career and all of that, and we'll talk about hockey and being a fan. But I want to begin with this. Who would guess that Joey Gladstone is now a grandfather? Grandpa Joey, congratulations. How does that feel?
It's unbelievable. My son texts me, day-by-day pictures of the kid. His name is Chance. And there's one picture that he sent me, and he's like this in my son's arms. And I said, I think he shoots left.
You wanted to be a righty, though, Cooler.
Yeah, I said, have you figured that? I'm a righty, but I said, I think he shoots left. You better check again. Get a stick in that kid's hands. Start figuring this out.
In light of what you've been through, how much more special is your grandfatherhood?
Well, we heard the good news that I was cancer-free.
Congratulations,
literally,
by the way. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
Thanks. We heard literally the same day. And I was like, Dave, you're cancer-free, and a baby is born. And I was just like, wow, this is incredible. And so it was pretty miraculous the way this kid came into the world with his timing.
Yeah, that's got to be the biggest day of your life, other than your marriage. Maybe that might be a close second. Or the times how many I know you always play in these hockey games. I've played in them. I'm temporarily retired from playing goalie in any of these games because
you retired a long time ago.
No,
after the game at Comerica Park, you gave it up because you look so bad.
In men's leagues games, because these guys are pain in the ass. This guy's like Mickey Redmond, for instance, Chelly. They buzz the tower, which means they're shooting at your head. Hi, who's the hardest guy to play against? You know, there's men's rules when you're playing men's league. Like who's the biggest pain in the ass out there? Because there's always one or two of them.
Yeah, well, we play on Saturday mornings in Mount Clemens.
Yep.
And it's 7 a.m. We're out there, which sounds terrifyingly early on a Saturday morning. But by 9 o'clock, you're home and you got a skate under your belt. What really is a pet peeve of mine is the guys that skate with us, when their sons are home from college, these are Division I kids that are 20 years old, and it's just like, just go by me. Don't like make a move near me. Just go, just blow by. Like, don't don't try and make me an honorary pylon. Just go around me like the pylon that I am. You know? But that's tough to defend against when you're playing a kid who's playing D1 college and they're 6'3" with hands and they can just blow around you, and it's like, okay, can't we just get some more 65-year-olds out here?
There's always those guys, Coulier, that get ultra competitive. I think of Chelly. Chris Draper plays in the alumni game in Toronto, gets in a fight with Gary Roberts for no other reason than that, because he didn't want to lose no matter what. I'm barely holding on in net. I was out the night before in Toronto.
Wait,
I was there.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
what?
My highlight there was when Boreal Salming had a penalty shot on me. You speak of highlights of your career. That was outstanding stuff. But Drapes can't handle losing no matter what. We played in Traverse City. So what guy is like that, Coulier? There's always a guy like that takes it over the top.
Well, we were playing an alumni game a few years ago, and some guy thought it would be really funny to cross-check Joey Kosher in the back.
Oh, boy.
So he gave Joey a two-hander, and Joey just went and kind of picked this guy up and slid him up the glass and just said, don't. So we're all on the bench, and Joey comes back, and I said, Joe, what'd you say to him? He goes, what do you think I said? And I said, it looked like you just said, don't ever do that again.
All right, I don't want to gloss over the journey that you've had. You're proudly wearing the Hockey Fights Cancer jersey there. It's obviously a big part of who you are now. Take me through it. What's how frightening can it be? How emotional was it for you and your wife as you found your way to the end of being of having cancer and now being cancer-free?
Well, I've had a lot of cancer with the women in my family. I lost my sister, my mom, my niece. My sister Karen currently is battling cancer. And so I've seen their journeys and how tough they were. And when I was diagnosed, I thought if I could just be like 10% of that strength that I saw them enduring their cancer battles, then I'm going to be okay. You never think you're going to hear the C word apply to you, though. And so I was battling a little cold, and I had a lymph node in my groin area kind of swell up. You know, sometimes you're battling something and your armpits will swell up and your lymph nodes go a little crazy. So that's what happened to me. And within 5 days, it was the size of a golf ball. And I said to my wife, I said, hey, this doesn't feel right. She goes, no, we got to go talk to somebody. So that was 5 days that it grew to that size. And then I had another one appear in my neck. And that was trouble because when it crosses over the hemisphere of your body, look out, because it has spread to, a new place. And that is a big flag. So when we went to the hospital, actually, Dr. Tony Colucci, the Red Wings doctor, really kind of guided me through this whole process. And so we went in and we got biopsied, and then we had to wait about 7 days. And I was at home by myself. Melissa was about 20 minutes away from arriving. And Dr. Colucci and my other doctor, Leo Tamagian, also a hockey guy, said, we wish we had better news for you, Dave, but you have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and you have a very aggressive strain. It's called B cell. And we're going to have to get you in for chemo. And I said, when? And they said, like, next week. And I was like, holy smokes, this is a lot to digest. And then my wife came home, and I said, she said to me the first thing, have you heard anything about your test results? And I said, yeah, I just got them back, and I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She goes, what does that mean? I said, I have cancer. And it was like I hit her with a gut punch. And we just held each other and we cried. And the light bulb moment that I had was, I think I can somehow turn this into a positive. And my thought was, I'm going to go on TV and into the media however I can and encourage people to get mammograms and prostate exams and colonoscopies. That's what I'm going to do. And I did, and I went on the Today Show. And after I finished telling people just that, Hoda looked at me and she said, "You know what you did today?" And I said, "Told people I had cancer." And she said, "You helped a lot of people." And the response was immediate. We started hearing from, and this sounds like I'm making a number up, but we heard from thousands of people that said, I'm going to go get, I'm going to go get early screen. And so at that point, I knew I had made the right decision, that I can encourage people all along the way through my journey and afterwards to go. And, early detection is everything. It saved my life.
I will share with everybody. My wife's been through 2 bouts of cancer, and there was a moment, and you'll appreciate this. Former Red Wing coach Mike Babcock had heard that Linda was going through breast cancer, and he kind of pulled me into the visitors' dressing room at Joe Louis Arena, and he said, "I want to talk to you," because he had heard about it, and he said, "Tell me about it." And I shared with him what she was going through, what we were going through, and he just kind of looked at me and says, "All right, let's fix it. Let's get it out of there. Let's resolve this." And it was that moment that just sort of gave me the strength that you have to sort of attack these things. And I've shared that with Babs, even as he's moved on, how much it meant to me. And you will appreciate this, having watched her go through it. I mean, you're in awe of somebody who's going through cancer treatment, and more than that, seeing kids that are going through it and thinking, well, geez, if kids can get through this, we can certainly handle this, because we've lived a good chunk of our lives. And so it's a great story, and there are sensational great stories out there, as tough as that news is to hear.
We're seeing cancer in people at much younger ages. It used to be for men, we'd say, go get a colonoscopy when you're 50. Now they're finding across the board, and I've learned more about cancer than I thought I ever would know, but we're finding cancers, colon cancers, in children. We're finding cancers with very young people. We're finding colon cancer, and we're finding instances of women before their 40s into their 30s. And that is a very bold statement about, what we're ingesting, what's in our environment, what's in our clothes, what's in the foods that we're eating. There's a lot of stuff out there that is causing this. And, it's when you start looking at ingredients of food, it's when you start looking at your plastic on your baseball hat. You sweat, and the polyester and everything goes into your pores. It's the underwear that we're wearing. It's everything that's around us. And so there are choices you can make, but when you see cancer happening all across the board, various types of cancers, it's a big red flag as to, what's going on environmentally with us.
All right. Well, we're delighted that you're on the other side of it. And when we got news that you were cancer-free, we're absolutely thrilled for you and your family and everybody who follows you. We're going to take a break. And when Ozzy and Keats continues, we will talk of maybe Dave Coulier's beginnings as a Red Wing fan and as an actor next in a moment. Big thanks to Bell Tire here for supporting this podcast and for always putting the customer first. Whether it's offering the lowest tire prices, getting you in and out faster, or making tire buying and auto care easier, Bell Tire is changing tires and changing the experience for the better. Stop by Bell Tire or visit belltire.com to see the difference for yourself. Rosenau is the largest power sports dealer in the Tri-County area, and as we go into summer, they carry all 3 brands of PWC, Sea-Doo, Yamaha, and Kawasaki, with huge rebates or promo financing available. Call 313-278-5000 to take advantage while supplies last. Coulier joins us. Take us back. What was it like becoming a big-time TV star, this kid from Detroit, when you found your way to L.A. and Full House just kind of exploded?
Well, I had a really funny family growing up. And my aunts and uncles at family gatherings would all sit around one big table and tell one-liners and jokes. And they talked about who was on the Tonight Show, the comedian the night before. And they would talk about, did you see The Honeymooners last night with Jackie Gleason? So they laughed, and I always wanted to be at that adult table telling jokes. And my dad was very funny. My mom had a great sense of humor. My brother was the funniest person I ever knew. And my sister Sharon was very funny. So I was surrounded by funny people my whole life and just admired comedians so much. So growing up in St. Clair Shores, I went to St. Isaac Jogues Elementary School. And I was in third grade class, and I'm walking up to get my paper from the teacher, and I walk by this kid's desk, and I see him drawing these weird little characters in his notebook. And then I kind of clocked that, got my paper, and I walked back, and I said, "What are those?" He goes, "I'm drawing Martians." And I was like, "You and I are going to be friends." And so his name was Mark Sandrowski. And we later became roommates in LA, but he directed every episode of The Big Bang Theory, all 300 episodes. But he's probably the biggest director in television now. But I had a partner in crime from third grade all the way through Notre Dame High School. And so we would entertain at the hockey banquets. We would get up and I would do impressions of the coach. We would, do impressions of how kids skated, like, "Oh, this is Steve Boccia backwards skating," and we would do all these things. So we would always do a show. And then in high school, we formed a group with 10 guys, and we did a show at the all girls high school next door. And it was called Linus Pauling and the Band. And we did sketches, and it was comedy, comedy, comedy. So I moved to LA when I was 19. I had already met Bob Saget here in Detroit when I was 18 at a comedy night at a place called the Delta Lady on 9.5 in Woodward. And Saget comes in on this comedy tour with 2 other comics from the Comedy Store in LA. And I'm watching, I still have braces on my teeth. And these guys walk up on stage, and Saget just kills. And I'm like, wow, there was such a disparity in our level of performance. And so I talked to him afterwards, and he goes, "Well, here, take my number and call me when you get out to LA." And I still have that napkin with Bob's number on it in a scrapbook. And I called him when I got to LA, and I became a regular at the Comedy Store. And my group was incredible. It was Bob Saget, Gary Shandling, Dennis Miller, Seinfeld, Robin Williams, Letterman, Leno, Jim Carrey, Drew Carey, Roseanne. It was such an amazing environment to be a young comedian surrounded by all these super talents who weren't famous yet. And we were all just trying to do our best every night, but it was tough following Robin Williams or Seinfeld or Shandling or Saget, because those guys were so good. But, Chris, this, when you play with great players, it elevates your game. And same thing with stand-ups. When you were following Robin Williams or a guy like Gary Shandling, you had to be throwing your fastball every pitch, and so it was an exciting time. It was an incredible time to be in Hollywood, being a young comic.
Absolutely. That's and you answered my question for me. I was going to ask you most nervous moments doing stand-up. Well, that's got to be it right there when you're following those names. That's outstanding stuff. And I'll go back to most nervous or best moment in your acting career.
Well, when you talk about nervous moments, I'll talk about one famous nervous moment that I had first. Everybody wanted to do the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson hosting. So at 24, I'm sitting at the Improv on Melrose Avenue out in Hollywood with Gary Shandling, and both he and I just had done a set. And Jim McCauley, the talent coordinator, comes over to Gary and I. We're sitting there having something to eat after our shows. And Gary had already been on the Tonight Show a ton of times. So Jim came over, and I thought he was going to talk to Gary, and he said, "Dave, you're going to do the show on Thursday." I said, I'm not ready, Jim. I'm not. He goes, no, I saw your set tonight, Thursday.
Wow.
Come into my office on Monday. We'll talk about your set. And I was like, did that just happen? And then on Thursday, I did the Tonight Show. Now, back then, the Tonight Show was the show. There wasn't cable, there wasn't streaming, there wasn't, there wasn't internet. It was, you knew everybody in America was going to be watching the young new comedian on the Tonight Show that night. And, I'm sitting in my dressing room. Bob Saget and Gary Shandling were with me. Here comes Johnny Carson. Hi, Dave. Johnny Carson. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding. Have a great set. Boom. And that was it. And he walked away. And then you wait for the guests. And then all of a sudden, it's time. Come on. And you're standing behind that curtain and you hear Doc Severinsen and the orchestra. Da, 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 da. And, like Jim McCauley, the talent coordinator, pulls the curtain open and he goes, that's Johnny's star. Do not walk out to Johnny's star. That's your mark, 15 feet behind him. And, acknowledge Johnny, acknowledge Doc. And there's your camera right there. Have a great set. Boom. And then, I'm glad you're in a good mood tonight. We have a new young comedian joining us. And, blah, blah, blah. And here he is, Dave Coulier. And boom, the curtains open and that red light goes on. And you realize that is everyone in America watching right now. And, I did my set. And at the end, you always wanted to get the okay sign from Carson. And I looked over and he went, thank you, Dave. And I was like,
wow.
Oh, man, but you want to talk about, your heart pumping and man, like this has to go great right now. This is everything I've worked towards.
For my own knowledge, you were to be a member of the cast of Saturday Night Live. You thought that was going to happen, and then it didn't. Tell me that story, if you would.
Yeah, I've had some great failures too. That was one of them. I went to NBC and did my screen test. And you go in a room and there's a camera, and then they shut the door, and you just have to do something. And so there's a glass window, and that Lauren Michaels and whoever else is sitting on the other side of that. And so I did all my stuff, and I can kind of hear laughter, through the glass. And I'm like, I think this is going well. And the last bit I did, I pulled off my shirt and I did, this is an impression of a dying walrus. And I did this thing where I go like this and I have my shirt off and I wriggle around on the floor and I just go, okay, that's it. And then Bernie Brillstein, who was this famous manager, walks in, and Bernie goes, "That was pretty good, kid. That was really, really funny. Boy, where the hell did you come up with this walrus thing? Jeez, that was good. That was good, right?" And so I get a call. I leave. No one says anything. I go back to my apartment, and I get a message from my manager, Brad Gray, who later became the president of Paramount Studios. And so Brad leaves me a message, "Dave, give me a call, I got good news." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I talked to him. He said, "Hey, listen, I just got off the phone with Lauren and you're going to New York." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me." And he goes, "No, they loved it. What, you did some kind of walrus thing?" "Yeah, I did this walrus thing." And he goes, "Well, you'll have to show me that, but you're going to New York in 2 weeks." And so, of course, I called everybody I knew, my family, my friends, other comedians, and they're like, "That's amazing, SNL, that's huge, And so I start packing. I tell my landlord, "Listen, I gotta, leave for, SNL in a couple weeks. I gotta get rid of my apartment." And back then you could only find apartments by looking through the, like the New York Times classifieds. So they got me the classifieds, and I'm like, I don't know where any of these places are. I'm looking for apartments. And so I found an apartment in New York, and I'm getting ready to go. And I've got everything packed up in my apartment in boxes, and I'm ready to ship it to New York. And I get a call like the next day, and it's my manager, Brad. And he said, hey, I just got off the phone with Brandon Tartikoff, who was then president of NBC.
Right.
And you didn't get the show. And I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, he thinks you and Dana Carvey are too similar. And I said, well, what does that mean? He goes, you didn't get the show. And I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. So I ran over to my landlord and I said, don't give my apartment away. She goes, I already rented it out. I go, I need it back. And I told her the story. She goes, all right, I'll work something out. So I got my apartment back, but I had to tell everybody in my life that I got fired before I even got hired. And, my mom was really upset. How could they do that to you? I want to call those people. Like, that's not how it works, Mom. No. But it was really a low point. Had I gone to New York that season, it was a really, really bad season. The cast didn't get along. There was a lot of fighting to get characters on into the sketches. So it was not a great season to be there. But had I gone to New York, I would have never read for the pilot for Full House.
Yeah.
I would have been in New York. So it was one of those moments where it was like being at the very bottom to, I'm going to do this Full House pilot. It wasn't quite SNL, but little did I know that Full House would become, a slice of TV Americana,
All right. Before we let you go, there are, I'll say, some people who think that your John Keating impression is okay. I'm not sure. I'm not sure John Keating necessarily thinks that.
Well, we're not going to get a lot of you anymore, so we're going to need more of these.
So maybe Coulier, since I'm retiring, maybe you could bring that impression to the Red Wings live set, entertain this one who's sitting next to me, and keep the flame alive, sort of.
All I need is an invite. All I need is an invite. I'll do some makeup or something and really do it right.
Well, yeah, the hair is sadly is approaching what the actual hairline I have is. So
I'm halfway there. I'm halfway there.
I know.
Man.
All right, give me 15 seconds of your John Keating, if you would. That's it. That's all we need.
Okay.
Boy, you are putting me on the spot. I haven't done this. I was really close a few years ago when I did it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And for anybody who does impressions, if you don't, see, I should have practiced it.
All right.
I should have practiced it before I came on. So I'll tell you what, Ozzy, you invite me.
Okay.
I'll work on it. I'll polish it up. And as a tribute to Keats,
we'll do that.
I'll come on and do it.
All right.
How about that?
That's perfect. That would be actually work a lot better, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Like, you're not there, but we could have you there.
That would be the best.
So you'd be there, but not.
The best of both
which is
worlds.
best of both worlds.
You wouldn't have to deal with me, but you could kind of hear me, which is what you want.
And Coulier, I haven't played goalie for, when was that Toronto game? I don't even remember.
1,000 years ago.
1,000 years ago, but and I'm going to say this with honesty. If you have a charity game, I will put the pads back on. I don't know for how many minutes, maybe 5 or 10, but I'll show up for that.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, it'd be an alumni game.
Yep.
Come out for alumni.
And all the goaltending is there.
I was at the Toronto game.
And that will be an upgrade and a downgrade all in one thing.
Yeah. We can't thank you enough. We're delighted that you're on the other side of this cancer stuff. We love seeing you around town and at the rink, and hopefully we'll cross paths soon.
Thanks, you guys. Always a pleasure. You guys are great to do this stuff with. But John, man, I just want to salute you to an incredible career. I was gone in LA for a long time, but still watched the games. And you do such a great job. And I know you hear accolades from a lot of people, but from a kid who grew up in St. Clair Shores and moved out to Hollywood and came back, man, there's nobody better. You just, you are a gem, and people are really going to miss you.
That means a ton. Thanks, Coulier. We'll see you soon.
Good stuff.
All right, and to everybody watching and listening, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Ozzy and Keats.
Ozzy and Keats is produced and edited by Zachary Davis and Bill McAllister and proudly distributed by Podcast Nation in Troy, Michigan.